everyone, welcome back to Women in Tech's second episode of A Girl's Guide to STEAM. I am here with Abbey Holsopple, Helaina Gomez, and Teresa Israel from the Tennessee Aquarium Conservation Institute, also known as TNACI. We are here in the Spark Studio here at the I2C. Today we're going to talk with these wonderful women about their careers and just some general advice that they have for women going into a STEAM career. Well, ladies, how are y'all doing?
Great, thank you.
Pretty good. Thank you for having us.
Oh, of course. We're so glad that you're here. So, starting off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourselves?
My name's Helaina Gomez. I am the Watershed Coordinator at TNACI. We'll get a little bit more into that later on. So, I graduated from Shorter University in 2020. We all know how that year went, so I took a little bit of time between getting my ecology degree and actually getting into the conservation field. And so as of right now, I am 2 years into my first true conservation career.
Very nice to meet you, Helaina.
Nice to
Why
meet
don't
you.
we continue with...
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
My name is Abbey Holsopple. I am the recovery biologist at TNACI. I graduated in December of 2021, I think, from Tennessee Tech University with my master's in biology. And previous to that, I got a degree in fisheries and aquaculture from a state school in New York called SUNY Cobleskill.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, and Teresa?
I'm Teresa Israel. I'm the Reintroduction Biologist at TNACI, actually one of two. I am a Reintroduction Biologist there. And I have a master's in environmental management and sustainability from James Madison University in coordination with the University of Malta. So I actually did my graduate degree abroad, and I have a biology degree from Penn State as well.
Very nice. Well, you all seem like you are extremely educated and just amazing overall women.
I guess we'll see.
Yes, yes. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about what your specific area, I guess, of conservation entails a little bit.
Sure. We kind of talked about it a little bit on the way here. I feel like it makes the most sense if Abby starts.
Oh yeah, I will. So my job at TNACI as a recovery biologist is to, a majority of my job requires work in the field,
Okay.
kind of going out to streams and sampling for fishes. So my background is all in fisheries, aquaculture, and I specifically now work with imperiled species. So threatened and endangered species of fish or fish that are of conservation need in general. And so a lot of my position is going out and doing field work, looking at the species, doing different habitat studies, checking on the populations, seeing what their numbers are looking like, and just collecting data on the fishes to inform the rest of the work at TNACI. And so my job often informs some of the work that Helena's doing and a lot of the work that Teresa will be doing too.
Oh, I see. So basically kind of like the start of a system then.
It's the start of a system,
I
yeah.
see. Very much a systematic process. Okay, well,
Yes.
Helaina, why don't you tell us next what your part is?
Yeah, so as the Watershed Coordinator, and what most relates to what Abby's talking about, you know, actually being in the stream and handling those fish and determining, you know, what is most impacting the reason that this fish is threatened or endangered or of conservation concern. Right now we're working with a fish called the laurel dace. It only occurs in just a few streams up on the Cumberland Plateau where we are in Chattanooga, or just a little bit north of where we are. And so I actually work with the landowners and the communities surrounding those habitats to try and get some conservation practice on their land. Right now we're working with the NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and they facilitate landowners with technical and financial assistance if they want to reduce the amount of topsoil that they're losing. And the laurel dace is primarily affected by that sediment entering the streams, kind of mucking up the water. They're very beautiful, brightly colored fish, so they rely on their sight to reproduce, to feed, and you can see how that muddy water might make those things difficult for them.
Yeah, so very much out in the field and a lot of communication and whatnot.
Yes, very much communicating with the communities in that area, the specific landowners that are adjacent to that habitat, and just communicating with them, letting them know the work that we are doing, what our mission is, and how that can benefit both the landowner and the beautiful wildlife that we're surrounded by.
Yeah, well, awesome. Teresa, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do as well?
Yeah, so then for my part as the reintroduction biologist, I work mostly at TNACI in the propagation room, which is our hatchery.
Okay,
And
got you.
So I raise the fish that are reintroduced into these habitats that these other ladies have been talking about. So our main projects right now, we have the lake sturgeon. That's our biggest project. So we do the whole project from just little baby sturgeon. We raise them and grow them out in the propagation room, and then we reintroduce them back into the Tennessee River. And
Wow.
yeah, that's our big project. And then we also have Southern Appalachian brook trout, and that's Tennessee's only native species of trout, and we get to do the entire process there from the actual spawning. We keep the brood stock at the Conservation Institute, and we do the spawning, we raise the eggs, the juveniles, and then release them back into the wild. So that's a great project as well.
It sounds like a very complicated process for sure. Very
It is.
hands-on and just, yeah, I don't know. It sounds super cool though. All of y'all's positions are so exciting and I can't wait to hear more about it. So I guess why don't you tell me a little bit about your interest in your current field, or just your interest in STEM sort of related or STEAM related fields from like a young age. Like, I guess what inspired you to kind of get into the position you are in now?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit on the way up, and I was saying I'm not really sure exactly how I ended up here. I grew up loving fishing in the outdoors. I was always in a kayak paddling around, exploring the Finger Lakes region in New York, which is like freshwater glacial lakes.
Okay.
And so I grew up loving the outdoors doing that. I actually, when I graduated from high school, I was really good at math, and so I was like, I'm gonna be an engineer.
Oh, I see.
I went to school for engineering for a week and then dropped out.
Understandable.
And signed up for classes at the community college the next week doing fish and wildlife techniques.
Oh, I see.
And so it was just something that I was like, this is something I want to take some classes in, and I fell in love with it. And I thought I was just going to get an associate's degree, and here I am with a master's. So
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that is so exciting.
Yeah.
It's super cool to just hear how, like, an interest just from a young age of just being outdoors and stuff can lead to a full-on career that you're in right now.
Yeah, and shout out to my mom, because she, all through my senior year, was trying to pressure me to go to Finger Lakes Community College. And she was like, you should be an outdoors person. Like, you should go for fisheries. You should go for environmental science. And I was like, no, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. Turns out she was right all along.
They
So.
always know.
Yeah.
They always know.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to her, because we are so glad that you are here talking to us about your current career now.
Yeah.
So, very exciting. Well, why don't you continue, Helaina?
Sure. My origins kind of started similar to Abby's, very much interested in the outdoors, nature, any opportunity I got, I wanted to be outside playing. I didn't know that I was going to end up working with fish. I didn't grow up fishing. It wasn't something that my family really did, so it was something that I pursued on my own. And I remember picking up a book, like somewhere in elementary school, and it was all different types of careers that you could have working with animals. And I landed on wildlife photographer, which was something very random, but I thought, okay, yeah, this could be really cool. It means that I'm going to be outside photographing animals in the wild. And as I grew up, that kind of evolved into, oh, well, I could be a veterinarian. And so then I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be a vet. And then when it came to graduation from high school, I was like, I don't really know that I want to be a veterinarian. Like, I've had my experience and how I take my animals to the vet, and I don't think that I can handle that. So big kudos to those who actually do, because it's a very important and also difficult job. And so I decided to go to community college from there. I was like, okay, I need a little bit of time to figure it out. I knew I wanted to pursue STEM and the sciences, because that's something that always challenged me when I was in high school. It wasn't something that came as easily as the arts or as like history did. And I was like, okay, I want to always continue learning, and this is something that really pushes me. And so I started following the biology track. And then as I got further along, I transferred over to Shorter and pursued a degree in ecology and field biology. I thought, okay, I love the area I live in. It was the, foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And I thought, I want to find a way that I can be working in these freshwater ecosystems. Like, they're beautiful. And so anyhow, finished my degree in ecology, and then ended up following the path of the fish.
That's what we should just title this episode.
Right, following the path of the fish. Yeah, it's not. I didn't expect to be working with fish, but they definitely have captured my heart, and I feel really lucky to be in the position that I am.
Yeah, well, I love hearing about y'all's experiences and stuff of just trying to figure out what you want to do, because I feel like there's so much pressure in trying to figure out what you want to do exactly from high school and go straight to a 4-year college. So hearing your experiences about taking the moment to really focus, okay, what is it that I want to do, and taking your time at community college to then further develop your interests is so great to hear about, because I feel like we don't hear as much about those sort of career opportunities. I can totally understand that from my own experience of going to community college as well.
Yeah, I would not be here today if it weren't for the community college that I went to and the mentors that I had there and at Cobleskill also. So,
Yeah, very helpful. It's very great. Shout out to community college.
Yeah.
Well, Teresa, why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about your interest in STEM from a young age?
Yeah, jumping off of that, I will say I think it's more common to change your mind than people want to admit, but I did a year in engineering school as well, and then decided that was just absolutely not for me.
And understandable.
Yes, and so when I transferred to Penn State, I just took an environmental studies class, and it was much more on the studies side than on the actual science side, just like talking about it and poetry, but I loved it. And I was like, of course I would want to be in something like this, because I too grew up outside. Like, my parents opened the door in the morning and said, don't come back until the street lights come on, Like, I grew up where we were always outside, and we traveled and got to see so many different habitats, and my grandparents had a house on the beach, so I think a lot of times the tide pools really influenced me. I'm like, this is so cool, this is what I want to do. But I had lots of different experiences. In middle school, I was on a Lego robotics team for middle school girls only. It's sponsored by the YWCA. So that was a great experience to see a bunch of other women in, girls really, in science there. And then later on, I volunteered at the Pittsburgh Zoo as a zoo teen and got to get some hands-on animal experience, and I knew I liked that. But then even with that, still tried engineering, didn't like it, and went back into biology. So it also was kind of a winding path of different experiences for me.
Yeah, well, I think that's totally understandable about, changing your mind and stuff. It's much more common than people really think, because, it's a huge choice trying to figure out exactly what you want to do. But I am so glad that y'all ended up in the position that y'all are at now and are able to talk with y'all today about it. So why don't we kind of talk a little bit about your career overview and stuff of just throughout, I guess, a little bit more in depth about your career in college and stuff, or like right after college. How did you kind of figure out, what you wanted to do right out of college, I guess? I know that's a little bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, well, I'll start, because I kind of referenced it earlier. Graduating in 2020 was difficult. There weren't many places taking on new folks. Everybody was sticking within their circles, understandably so. So I just kind of took a pause, did some reflection, and somewhere around 2022, I actually found AmeriCorps, which was something that I had considered while I was in college. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go join the Peace Corps. That sounds like a really interesting thing to do. And then kind of came back to that. I joined AmeriCorps and worked for Southeast Conservation Corps. So we partnered with the Forest Service in the Southeast, essentially worked as contractors for the Forest Service, and traveled to all the different national forests in the area, did a lot of land management, which kind of lends itself well to what I'm doing now. So whenever that ended, that was very intense also. It was something that really built my endurance and grit, for lack of a better word. It was a lot of outdoor work from sun up to sundown in the what we often called the armpit of summer, in Georgia, in Tennessee, some in Kentucky. It gets hot. So I did that for 6 months. It was just a 6-month term. And on my very last hitch, we called them hitches because we were out for 9 days at a time. And on my very last day, we came back, we're doing the D-rig, we're cleaning all of our stuff, and I got an interview with Tennessee Aquarium. And I was like, okay guys, I'm gonna have to go like run somewhere else with my computer really quick. And I was dirty off of like a 9-day working trip. And anyway, I guess it endeared me to them because I got the job. I started part-time as an educator at the aquarium, and then within a few months moved into my position as the Watershed Coordinator, where I interact with several different government organizations, nonprofits, landowners. So that's kind of what led me to where I am now.
Yeah, well, I guess what's the difference in the communication between the educational aspect, like you were saying, of the part-time career to your communication now with the farmers and landowners?
Yeah, I'd say that the biggest difference is that when I was in the aquarium educating, I did have a diverse audience, right? Anywhere from toddlers to seniors, so many different people to talk with about the aquarium, but they came to me, they came to the aquarium, they were already interested in it. And that's the biggest difference in what I'm doing now. I'm bringing our conservation work to them. And again, I'm working with a diverse audience, so I do still have to scale that knowledge, know who I'm speaking to, and communicate that in the best way possible. Very much understanding their needs before I express our own, because it's really important to meet somewhere in that middle ground, because overall, we are coming to their lives instead of them coming to us. And it's important that we convey those messages in the right way and in a way that, again, is going to ideally benefit them while also, again, I said this earlier, but supporting just the amount of biodiversity around us and maintaining that for not just us now, but future generations to come. I think that the Southeast has a lot to pride itself on, and I hope that that can continue.
Yeah, well, it sounds like your preparation in the educational world, I guess, kind of helped prepare you for your position now, even though it is kind of different since they did, come to the aquarium and
Right.
now you're reaching out to them. But yeah, it sounds super interesting now.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. I also do some work with different schools, different clubs like 4-H, FFA. And so I do still get to engage with those younger audiences because it is really important, just like, we're sitting here today, a Girls Guide to STEAM, to get them exposed to those different aspects of STEAM, whether that's actually working with the fish or whether that's just like conservation in general. If you want to go a different direction, if you're into the amphibians, the frogs and the salamanders or turtles or any of the other cool things that you can find around here.
Yeah, well, awesome. Abby or Teresa, would you like to continue?
You go.
Sure, yeah. So when I graduated with my biology degree from Penn State, I didn't think I wanted to go to grad school right away, but I wanted to take the GRE right away while it was all still fresh. So when I took the GRE, they gave you the opportunity to send your scores to a few schools. So I had heard of a couple of programs that I was interested in and just sent them because those were the free ones.
Yeah,
and so I had sent out to this program that was a study abroad in Malta, and when I heard back that I was accepted, I was like, well, what kind of opportunity this is, and would I ever be able to live in Europe again and like for a year? So I ended up just deciding to do it. So even though I wasn't planning on going right into grad school, but I went, and it was an amazing experience and got to learn so many new things and see so many new places, and it was really great. So when I got back, I had a few months to finish up writing my thesis and everything, and wasn't really sure what kind of job I was going to apply for, and I just applied to anything that was even remotely relevant. So I spent a lot of time doing that, which is, sometimes just how it is when you get out of school. So I got a job with the Department of Environmental Protection in Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from. And I worked with them. I was an environmental trainee and then a solid waste inspector. So basically landfills, transfer stations, hazardous waste. So I did enjoy that job at the beginning and wasn't really sure if that's what I wanted to do in the long term. And eventually, as with I think a lot of state work, you can see that people don't leave those jobs. They're great jobs. And so I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. Am I the weird one? Because I don't know if I want to stay. But we ended up moving to Chattanooga actually for my husband's job. And so I was like, well, guess I don't have a choice. So we went and I didn't know what I was going to do. And well, I worked in the fish section at the Petco as the aquatic specialist. And so I was like, okay, I like this. This is cool. And then I had been applying with the aquarium and I ended up interviewing for the reintroduction assistant. So I started there part-time as an assistant and I loved it and it was a great job, but these, are jobs that don't come up all the time. So I was lucky enough to be there when a reintroduction biologist position opened up and was able to move into that role. So it's been really great, a great opportunity.
Yeah, well, it seems like your direction, I guess, from that simple job at Petco, shout out to them.
Yeah, you never know. You never
know. I remember in one of the other podcast episodes that I recorded, one of the people said, you just have to learn to pivot. Life is, you might feel like you're stuck on that one track, but you just have to get used to pivoting in life because life's going to go ahead and pivot with or without you, so you just got to get used to it. So it sounds like you're taking that adjustment very well and stuff and are, able to pivot very well. So yeah, I love that.
I've really enjoyed being in this field and seeing how many people have had that goal and wanted to really work with fish, and some people have known forever, and I'm glad that I have a different experience and was able to just jump into it, and I've learned so much from all the people that I work with, and they've really taught me a lot. It's been a great experience.
Yeah, well, it seems like your ability to jump in and stuff just shows your adaptability as, as just a person. So that's great to hear. Okay, Abby.
Okay, so when I was in undergrad at SUNY Cobleskill, I was studying fisheries and aquaculture. And it was mostly like fisheries management stuff, and so things like managing populations in your pond or in a lake, like different fish populations. A lot of it was surrounding sport management, and so stocking of trout and things like that. And so I was really interested in that. I was definitely kind of heading down that path. And then I had a friend who had an internship the summer before. And she told me, this is a really cool internship. You should apply to it. And it was actually the George Benz ichthyology position at the Tennessee Aquarium.
Oh, I see.
And so I applied to that. And there was actually a Cobleskill grad working at the Tennessee Aquarium at the time. And I interviewed with them, and they hired me for the position for the summer. And so I went to the Tennessee Aquarium that summer, and I worked directly with our ichthyologist, Bernie Kahida. And I got to do my own little research project, and I actually worked with the Laurel dace, which is a fish that we still work with to this day. I did a habitat association project to see what types of habitats they were preferring, and that was my first real independent research project, and I fell in love with it. And I knew from that moment that I was I don't care, I don't want to do sport fish management stuff. I want to do I want to work with threatened and endangered species. So it totally changed the path of my career moving forward, and I went back to New York. I graduated from Cobleskill, and they hired me as a technician for a year. And so I worked as a technician there, and I did kind of managed the field work. I managed all of our field gear. I helped with taking labs out and teaching students on labs, and I loved that. But I knew that I wanted to get back to what I was doing. And so I actually I didn't know that I wanted to go to grad school, but I was looking on the job boards one day and I saw a posting for a grad position that looked really cool to me at Tennessee Tech. I reached out to the professor and I emailed him. It had been a PhD posting, and I emailed him and said, I'm not ready to get my PhD yet, but I was wondering if you had any masters doing similar work. And he basically said at the time, like, you know, my lab is full. I don't have anything to offer you right now, but I'll keep your name in mind. And I think it was like 6 months later, he sent me a contact. There had been a new professor that started at Tennessee Tech, and he was looking for a grad student. And he reached out to me, and the rest is history. So he offered me a position. I worked there under Dr. Kit Wheeler, and I did research with the striated darter, which is a fish in the Duck River system. And I did kind of the same work that I did with Oral Dace, like microhabitat associations, checking up on their population. They hadn't been looked into in quite some time, so did research with that. And then after there, I worked for a little bit at a different job, and then this position opened up, and I applied to it and got it.
Wow. Well, it seems like you just
So
had to come back.
it was a full circle moment.
Yeah.
It was like this job was the job that changed the course of my career, and now I'm back and I'm getting to get more experience here, and I love it.
Yeah, well, that's so exciting. That full circle moment
Yeah.
right there is
It's
just
a
so
long,
sweet.
it's a long story, but
well,
a good
still.
one, I think.
Well, still, I love to hear that, though, that full circle moment, like you said, and that's just so exciting how just one moment of like an internship or something can kind of change the course of what you think that your career is going to look like.
Yeah, and
especially
I'm
that
sure-
pivoting moment.
I'm sure I'll harp on this again later, but like as somebody in this field, definitely take the summer positions. Whatever opportunity you can get over the summer between your semesters, just do it, because you don't know what it'll turn into later on.
Exactly. You could have a full circle moment as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I love hearing all of y'all's amazing stories and stuff of post-grad and whatnot. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the misconceptions, I guess, about your certain fields? Is there any sort of misconceptions, or is it just pretty much straightforward, or do you want to dive into that, or?
Something that we all agreed on and had, similar misconceptions as we pursued these careers was that science, equals lab coat, safety glasses, looking in a microscope, and I think we can all attest to that's not necessarily the case. We are all female scientists, and we do things wildly different than in a laboratory with our coats on.
I can't tell you the last time I wore a lab coat.
No, truly, I think it was chemistry. It was chemistry in college, and I think that was the only time I ever wore a lab coat. You all might have other things to say, but I do know that was the first thing we all agreed on is we don't wear lab coats at all.
Okay, well, nice.
One thing I think in sort of my position's more of an animal care type role is the misconception is we just feed fish all day, and one thing that is different, and we have a lot of other responsibilities that people don't realize. We're not just scrubbing tanks and feeding fish. We have their life support systems that we work on. We have to make sure those are running well and that the water quality is good. We do our own water quality testing at TNACI. And we have to always be trying to consider the health of the fish and make sure that they are healthy and monitoring that. And then we do the spawning itself and all of these other things that go into our job. And we plan the reintroductions, the actual releases and field work and different things. So that's one thing I think people just think we're just feeding fish, but we have so much more to our jobs that we're doing every day.
Yeah, it very much sounds like it. It seems like it's a lot of upkeep to be able to maintain those species and keep them at the highest quality as possible and stuff, to be able to be introduced back into the wild. So understandable.
I do want to make a little shout out to Teresa and her fellow reintroduction biologist, Sarah Kate. They are kind of engineers. They do come up with very creative ways to take care of those fish in the best way possible. Abby joked earlier that you're a PVC pipe wizard.
Yeah. We get a little bit of all the jobs. We have to be plumbers and we have to be vets. We're definitely not vets, but we are monitoring the health of our animals. We have to do just a little piece of all those jobs to make sure that the propagation room runs as it should, and it's a lot of things that go into it.
It seems like you wear many hats in your position.
We do.
Well, is there anything else, or
I'll
Yeah.
feed off of Teresa's a little bit. Like, a lot of the times when we talk about our positions, we talk about the fun parts of it, right? Because our jobs are fun.
Yeah.
Like, inherently we have fun, but also, like, it's a lot of hard work. The things that we do, it requires a lot of our time and a lot of patience, and we devote our lives to it. We love it, and we choose to do that, but it doesn't just come naturally. It's a lot of hard work that we've put into it. It's a lot of coordination and a lot of communicating with outside partners, which is like, I love that part of my job, but it's just an added part. It's not just getting up in the morning and going out to the field to play with the fish. It's a lot of planning and a lot of coordination and a lot of long, hot, sweaty field days.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
actually, diving into that, I guess what's kind of the difference between the field work and the lab work in a way? I mean, I guess obviously, there's a difference in getting out in the outdoors and stuff, but I guess what's kind of a bit of a difference between that, I guess you could say, in your experience?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about like field work, and what we mean by that when we say we're doing field work is just means like we're out of the office doing like research or collecting fish or releasing fish. All of that is what we call field work. And I'll say that like a lot of my job, when I talk about it, I talk about doing the field work, but half of my job is field work and the other half is planning for the field work, preparing, trying to determine our standardized methods for whatever project we're working on. And then after the field work part, I still have to come back and, clean up all the gear and sanitize everything, making sure we're not bringing species from different streams. And then also like analyzing the data we have, trying to figure out what it means. Like, what does all of this data that we collected mean and what can we do with it? You can't tell the whole story just from the field work. You have to do stuff back in the office too.
I see.
Which is just as exciting and just as interesting. It's just not as picturesque, I guess.
yeah, understandable. There's definitely the two sides to that job, and I think that it's great that you're kind of clarifying that a little bit about, I guess what all that entails, because when I think of, y'all's positions, I think of getting out in the field and whatnot,
Yeah.
So just kind of hearing that other side helps create that full picture.
Yeah, if we didn't come back and do the stuff in the office, you wouldn't really hear that much about our jobs, because not much would come of it.
we wouldn't be very successful in what we do outside of the building.
Yeah.
And you really can't have one without the other.
Exactly.
We all have like little components that are both. And so my job is primarily not field work, but we do reintroductions and we collect brood stock, and we actually get the opportunity to go to Wisconsin and help with the sturgeon spawn as well. So like we have both of those pieces, and you can't have one without the other, and we all work together to make both happen.
Yeah. Well, I guess kind of going in that similar pathway, I guess this is kind of a cheesy question, but I think what personal attributes do you think that you have that kind of helps you fit for your position? Like, do you preferring, the communication, or preferring getting really up close with the species? Like, I guess what sort of attributes do you think help make that relationship stick, I guess?
I'll say I have a puzzle brain.
Okay.
I love puzzles. I love figuring things out. I ask a lot of questions.
Which is good.
Yeah, and so like as an ecologist, I have a lot of questions about like, well, why is that way, and what's making that happen? And I think in order to like be successful in what we do, you have to be curious about those things. And so the puzzle brain is, it comes in. It comes into play quite often.
Yeah.
I'd say something very similar, but in like the human dimensions aspect. While I will go out and do field work with Abbey and the recovery crew, my field work often looks like very different. I'm going out and interacting with people, and I think that being able to communicate with a diverse audience, being a people person in general, I really like meeting new people. I like learning them and adapting my communication strategies to that. And the what makes people tick side of it is really what gets me. I enjoy, understanding what individuals' values are and how that conservation psychology aspect works into it. What motivates them to change their behaviors. It's a different type of puzzle brain, but again, playing off of that ecology, why, what, how. That's kind of like the aspects of my personal attributes that I think play well into my role as the Watershed Coordinator.
Yeah.
Going back to sort of how we got into this field, I think one aspect I have is the perseverance to pursue it, is that it's really hard to get into this field and you have to keep trying. That's one thing that helped me kind of get here. And then more on like the day-to-day side in animal care, attention to detail is so important. You have to notice even like a tiny change in the animal's behavior that can indicate a problem, or, you know, a tiny leak that wasn't there yesterday, something like that. So I think attention to detail is really important in my specific role.
Also, along with like the perseverance thing, like being the person that's going to step up and say like, I want to do that, being the first person to speak up and say, I want that opportunity, and like taking things as they come to you, that will get you very far in this field.
Yeah, I'd say initiative is key.
Yeah.
Being a yes woman, if you will, saying yes to those opportunities and seeing where, you know, there's a gap and it needs to be filled. I think that goes a long way, and it's very much recognized in this field, like, oh, she's a go-getter, like she's gonna do what needs to be done, and I don't necessarily have to tell her to, you know. I think that very much stands out.
Yeah, well, it seems like you all have that attribute of being go-getters and stuff, and I love hearing that about just the personal attributes that help connect you to your position right now. Speaking on kind of what you were saying, Helaina, you mentioned something about being a real go-getter in in your position and stuff, and I was wondering, like, is your positions, I guess, the specific field that you work in, is it particularly like male dominated, or are you starting to kind of see a shift in trends of being more female dominated? I guess kind of expand upon that.
I'd say we're really lucky where we're at. I know that when you reached out to do the podcast, I responded and said, well, we have 8 female scientists to choose from. So we're really lucky at TNACI that, you know, the VP of Conservation is a woman, and she's done a really fantastic job of making sure that she curated space for women within the Conservation Institute as well. But, you know, when we get out of our actual building, our facility, you will start to see those fluctuations in gender ratios.
I will say, like, especially within the fisheries world, if you asked me before I came to TNACI, I would definitely say it's a male-dominated field. I, like, most of my mentors before coming to TNACI are males, and I worked on a lot of field crews where I was the only female. And I wouldn't say that it held me back, but it definitely is way more eye-opening to work with a bunch of other strong female scientists. And Anna, our vice president, does a really good job of like ensuring that that's the culture at TNACI, which we love.
And just back to that go-getter thing really quickly, I think something that kind of pushes us further toward that is being in a field crew or being surrounded by men and thinking, okay, I'm the only woman, like I've got to step up. That was something that was really important in my conservation corps work, was that we were a crew of all females. We were out in the middle of the woods and there was no man around to lift that heavy thing. There was no one else to do that dirty job, and we had to step up and get it done. And I think that being in a crew or being in a field where you're mostly surrounded by men, it encourages you to you know, keep showing up for women.
And I'll say it's getting better. Like, I think that our generation especially, there are a lot of women, like when we go to these conferences, fisheries conferences and things, there are a lot of women our age that are in this field. I would say that the generation before, like the women who were working in the generation before, they definitely paved the way for more space for women in it, which is great.
Yeah, and being part of the Tennessee Aquarium in an animal care role, I would say there's lots of women that work in husbandry kind of roles. And so there's lots of opportunities there as well. And I think, getting outside of the actual aquarium husbandry, there's maybe less women, but like Abby said, there's definitely more than there used to be, and I can see a lot more women entering the field, which has been great.
Yeah, well, that's so exciting, though. It makes me feel just so excited and inspired to hear all the stories of, upcoming women in said fields and stuff. I think that's great that there's going to be more opportunities and stuff. And like you said, that sort of go-getter spirit, I think that's something that I see a lot in the young people today of, God, I feel like I'm sounding old right now, but like people currently in middle school and high school and stuff, I can just kind of see that within them, that craving and stuff. And so that's really exciting to think about the possibility of, future scientists and stuff as well.
Yeah. It is funny to talk about the difference between like male and female in our space, because our office is so female dominated. Like we really do have a lot of female scientists around, and so it's not really
Shout out to the guys there, though. We
Yeah,
do have
guys are great.
amazing men working at the aquarium as well.
But we just like are surrounded by females all the time, so it's kind of a funny thing to talk about. But
Yeah, well, I love that though. That's so exciting. Okay, well, why don't we kind of shift a little bit into, I guess, would you mind expanding a little bit upon how the impact of each position kind of helps carry along that process of conservation in a way? I know we already kind of touched a little bit on it in the beginning, but maybe give a little bit more of a deep dive as well.
One thing that we talked about coming down here is that we do have like very different roles, and that's something we've talked about already, what we all do. And a lot of times we're also just in different places. Abby's field crew has been out all week. I've barely seen her over the last couple of months, and and we've been consumed in the propagation room. We barely ever get out, and so like we don't always get to be together all the time, but we work really hard on our communication to try and bridge those gaps a little bit, and we try our best to cross-train when we can, and I like to get out in the field when I can, and we love to have anybody come help in the propagation room if anybody wants to, so those are some ways that we try to bridge the gaps between our roles.
I'll also say that a lot of times Helaina is bridging the gaps between our roles, because when she's out talking to the public and doing outreach, she's telling the story of the entire Conservation Institute, and so that's everybody plays a role in that, and she's really good at like piecing it all together. But also we all have the same interest in the end, and we're all interested in, like, we're all trying to get to the same goal. And so like the cross training really helps, because we love to learn from each other, and we love to like see what the other person's day to day is like, and I don't know, it's fun to do different things.
Shout out to Helaina for making us all look good.
Hey guys, thanks. That cross-training thing I think is really important in teamwork, because we do run with a pretty small crew, and so oftentimes, propagation room will need an extra hand, especially like when the lake sturgeon are here. That's an all hands on deck operation, or in the times when we don't have those seasonal positions, Abby needs an extra hand, hauling that seine and getting that work done. And so everybody within the Conservation Institute has been really, really great about stepping in. Like, hey, I need help over here. And there's usually, 2 or 3 hands that go up and say, okay, I can come help you. So that cross-training thing really does help us to maintain teamwork for sure.
Yeah. And it goes back to the pivoting and rolling with the punches thing. Like sometimes I'll come in on a Monday and I'm like, hey, I have field work on Wednesday that I need 2 hands for. And like, that's a lot to ask of somebody to like change their schedule at the beginning of the week for that week. But people are always willing, which is great.
And we get a lot of tours at TNACI as well, and sometimes it'll be like, twice as many people showed up, can anyone run the other half of this tour? And someone always jumps in to help, so it's really good.
Well, it sounds like y'all's teamwork is really built on that solid foundation of communication. It seems like that's very important in teamwork, and I think that's something that we can all agree on, of how important that communication is. How do you think that you've kind of navigated that sort of role of communication? I know that you talked about how it's very important in helping that process of the conservation, but I guess how have you kind of navigated that in a way?
Even as simple as like we have a Monday meeting every week at 2 p.m. Everybody from TNACI comes and we just sit in a room, we go around the circle and we talk about what we're doing that week, what we need help with. The Monday meeting is like, essential for me to make my field plan, I swear.
Yeah. Monday meeting, I think, is definitely our greatest form of communication.
Yeah.
Because even if somebody can't be there, we take notes, we send them out to everybody. Everybody knows what's going on, especially like during right now, we're getting into our busier season. So we'll start to look out like the next week or the week after that. Like, okay, this is what's coming down. Everybody, you know, keep an eye out for that. Because we are in so many different places all the time. Meeting at 2 o'clock on Monday is really key.
It's often like the only time that we all see each other during a week, I'll say.
And Helaina takes really great notes because we work weekends a lot as propagation room staff. We have to work every day of the week.
Yeah.
So I miss a lot of Monday meetings just because if I work the weekend, I usually take off Monday. But Helena's notes are a lifesaver. She does the extreme detail, and then I don't feel left out when I
don't
come
know
back.
if you can tell, but Helena's the organized one out of all of us.
I never thought I'd be that person for the group.
I love it though.
It's cool to be receiving this new praise in my life.
Well, I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I know that y'all have mentioned outreach and whatnot, that y'all have visitors come by the TNACI area and do some outreach as well, communication with farmers and whatnot. I guess, would you mind expanding a little bit about y'all's outreach endeavors at TNACI and just what it entails, I guess?
Our two main ways, like for the propagation room, is tours. So we get a lot of tours through, and when they come to TNACI, there's lots of cool stuff to see, but you know, they want to come see the fish. So that's a big one, is talking about our projects in the propagation room. But then we also have the unique opportunity to have public sturgeon releases. And so we often invite a school group to come and help with the releases, and even just reaching out to different departments in the aquarium. We've done different like outreach with departments to show what we do and get people involved. And so that's a really unique opportunity to put a fish in their hands and have them release it back into the Tennessee River. So that's been really cool.
I love that. I haven't heard of that yet, so that's super cool. I may have to try to look more into that, because that's such a neat opportunity.
Come on up. It's usually in October, and oftentimes I put it in like the local Chattanooga news. So.
Okay, well, perfect. I will keep my eye out on that, because that sounds so cool.
It's a very cool opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I guess, what other outreach opportunities do y'all happen to do in regards to all of that, or?
You go.
My outreach is a lot more frequent, just because that's the biggest part of my role, is making sure that the community knows what we're doing, and how they can be involved, how they are a critical part in that. Most recently, actually, it included having hosting a dinner in a rural community, inviting landowners to join us, enjoy a good meal, and learn more about a program, as an opportunity for them to voluntarily, enroll, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's their decision, it's not ours. We don't intend to tell anyone what they need to do with their land. But just to be able to provide them with that information, give them also a community, a network within each other. Something that I've recognized while being in this role is, oftentimes these rural landowners, these farmers, they're spread out by hundreds of acres from their next door neighbor, and there aren't as many places to meet up as there might be in Chattanooga. So to be able to host a dinner like that and have everybody come together, talk to one another about what they're doing, what works, what doesn't, that's been my most recent outreach event, which is unlike other outreach that our education department at the main aquarium does. It's something that a lot of people weren't expecting out of us. Okay, that's also what drove the attendance. What is the aquarium doing up here? What do they have to talk to us about? So it's been a very unique opportunity for outreach and education, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a very unique opportunity. I hope that it went well.
It actually went really well. Much better than I was anticipating, and we're really excited about it.
Well, good.
I will also add to the landowner aspect of it. A lot of times I have to communicate with landowners because the field work we're doing, the fish we're interested in are on their land. And so a lot of times I'm actually coming to landowners and asking if it's okay that we come and sample on their property. And a lot of that aspect of my job is like juggling, you know, hey, trying to make them feel comfortable, like we're just coming to look at the fish and we're not, you know, I don't know, it's like a lot of balancing, trying to make them feel comfortable and also helping them like feel interested if they're interested in the species and teaching them about them. I really appreciate the landowners that I get to work with, and I love when they get excited about the fish. And so that can be a really fun part of my job, but I also I understand some of them, they have, you know, they're wary of letting people on their land, and I totally understand that. And so it's definitely like knowing who you're talking to and managing your expectations based on how they feel about you approaching them.
Yeah.
I will also give a plug to the aquarium has a great communications team, and we benefit from having the communications team because a lot of times they'll come out and help us share our stories. And so like most recently I was working on a project with a fish species called the tri-spot darter, and that project was doing field work for 3 months in the winter. And that's like a story that I probably wouldn't tell unless the communications team came out. And so they came out for a day, they took a video of us, they, you know, do an interview with me and I tell them what the project's about, and then they release that video out to the public. So it's on the Tennessee Aquarium's Facebook page. You can go watch it and learn a little bit about the work that we are doing with that. And so they're essential, I think, for sharing a lot of our work. A lot of the outreach that we specifically do is like directly outreach, teaching, you know, school groups or landowners, but the stuff that they do reaches kind of a wider audience.
Yeah, we'll be sure to try to link that in the description and stuff of the specific things that y'all have done. That's so exciting though, and I know that outreach is extremely important, trying to help maintain the conservation aspects that y'all are talking about. So that's really exciting that y'all have multiple ways of trying to help do that and stuff. That's so exciting, hearing about the sturgeon release and the dinner and the communications team. It sounds like y'all have got all your bases covered then, basically.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
And it's so fun too, like when you find a landowner that like has no idea what's in their stream, and you get to show them these like beautiful, brightly colored fishes that are like right in their backyard, and they had no idea they were there before. And sometimes it's incredible to see like their faces light up. Just to be like, I had no idea that was there.
We actually just had an experience like that.
Yeah.
There was a landowner who, we were in the Sequatchie River, so we were at a public access point, but his property backed up to that area, and he came down and was like, are you guys finding anything? And we actually had a few really beautiful fish, a Sequatchie darter, which is unique to that area, to show him, and he was like, wow, like pulled out his phone immediately, took a picture. It's always rewarding to have an interaction like that.
Yeah.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a little pivot, and I wanted to ask y'all about the advice portion of this episode. So I guess, what advice do you have for young women who are kind of interested in a STEAM career and kind of really don't know what to do, where to go, how to get started? I guess, what sort of just general advice do you have for them?
Take the opportunities that are offered to you. If you're interested in something, look more into it. If you have, this might happen more like when you're in college, but if you read a research paper and you're really interested in the research, reach out to the author and ask them more about it. Like, the people who are doing this research are doing it because they love it and they want to talk about it and they're excited to talk about it. And so you're not bothering people by reaching out to them. In fact, they'll probably feel really good about themselves if you do that.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was actually some of the best advice that I got in college was, if you're reading something that you like, reach out to that author, because just like Abby said, they want to talk about it, you know, and you really never know what kind of opportunities are going to arise from an interaction like that. Something that we kind of mentioned earlier is pursue those interests, you know, and anything that's calling you, try it out. You really don't know where it's going to lead you. I didn't expect to necessarily be where I am now, working directly with farmers and landowners. And when I graduated college, I thought, okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to go back to graduate school, probably like just for ecology. But now I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to go back to college, or, you know, to graduate school for behavior change strategies and that conservation psychology aspect of it, and doing some human dimension research, because the majority of property in this area, the majority of land in the southeast, where we also have more aquatic species than anywhere else in the nation, it's privately owned, and so it definitely requires working with those individuals, and being able to delve more into that, so that Abby can do her work better, so that Teresa can reach her goals as well. That's something that I didn't anticipate for myself, but I'm really jazzed on it now. So yeah, just pursuing those different interests, and giving yourself some time as well. It's not a race, don't get caught up in that timeline scheme of things. Try new things, try different things.
Mm-hmm.
Going along with everything they said is just don't give up. If you really want something, or you're really interested in something will work out eventually. It might take a while. Just like she said, don't be on one specific timeline. For me, I've bounced around lots of different things and landed in a really great role, but don't give up and keep at it.
Yeah, well, that's all great advice for sure for anybody in any sort of field. I mean, having to persevere and just taking your own time and just figuring out exactly what you want to do, that's extremely important to make sure that you can find the best career for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, what other sort of steps do you think that could be beneficial for somebody who is interested in a field that's specific to your career exactly? I guess if someone's in high school or college, getting involved in organizations, or trying to take on internships or research opportunities. I guess, what sort of things do you think might be beneficial in sort of taking forth on those steps per se?
I'll start, for those younger girls who are listening, who are in high school and are considering pursuing this type of career. If you have a teacher who inspired you toward thinking about this, talk to them about it. Talk to them about what got them to where they were, what they studied, and if there's any opportunities to just help them out, because as you're going into college, that's a great thing to highlight. Like, I worked with my biology professor to help set up the experiments, or to help clean up the experience. I mean, not only does that show that initiative, but it also shows that you were interested enough to dedicate some of your extra time to facilitating those experiences for others, but also learning more for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I would say the same thing even for college age students. If you have a professor and that the research they do is interesting to you, reach out to them and see if you can help with it. I know a lot of times you do, like when you're in a biology or whatever type of major, a lot of times you do kind of like a senior research project, and I'll say that I wish that I would have gotten more involved in research before my senior year. Because I think that if I would have reached out to the professors I was interested in helping, they would have absolutely afforded me that opportunity, and who knows where it would have taken me. You don't ever know what an opportunity is going to do for you, and just asking if you can be involved in things it can take you a far way.
Yeah.
And it's not everyone's favorite thing, but networking and meeting people is so important. And even if you think it's not in the traditional way, like at a conference or something, like one thing for me is I interviewed for a different role at the Conservation Institute that I didn't get, but that helped boost my application when I applied for the reintroduction assistant, and helped me get in there for that role. So even if it doesn't work out one way, it might another. You just meet the people and try to do your best to show them who you are. And
and stay in contact with those people. Like I worked at the Conservation Institute, and I kept bugging Bernie forever, I never left him alone. He always knew that I wanted to be in this field. I had him on my graduate committee through my whole thesis, and I was just always a little bug in his ear.
Okay, well, I think that's everything. Thank y'all so much, Helaina, Abby, and Teresa, for joining me today on a Girls Guide to STEAM podcast. Oop, excuse me. It has been a pleasure to talk with y'all. And I guess, where can they reach y'all at? The Tennessee Aquarium website, that's
tnaqua.org, and there's a tab on the homepage that says Conserve. So you can look through all of the stuff on that homepage, and it'll direct you toward different opportunities. I think whether that's just learning more about us or asking a scientist, I do want to say that I think at the bottom of that page there is that link that you can click on for opportunities with the Conservation Institute, whether that be summer fellowships, volunteering, things along those lines.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys for joining us on A Girl's Guide to STEAM. We'll see you next time.